Chaim Dalet, page 74a, probably 1. We learned an interesting machlekes between Reb Shimon and the Tanakama regarding a Menachos Daf of a Kayan. A Kayan does a sin, and it's
There's a spider on you.
You on me? Okay.
Weird.
They used to tell us that you get seven mitzvahs in one avera if you kill a spider or something. They used to tell. I don't know what that comes from. They said because it carried the straw to burn the Bais Hamikdash. The spiders carried straw. Okay. So the if a kohen does a sin, it's either he had testimony that he didn't. They asked him if he knows testimony, and he swears that he doesn't, and he really does. Or he enters into the temple impure, or he eats holy foods while he's impure. So those sins, he has to bring a sacrifice. But if he doesn't have the means, so he brings a bird. If he doesn't have the means, 2 birds. If he doesn't have the means, he brings a mincha. It's called the Menachos Daf. Reb Shimon holds that a Menachos Daf of a kayan, that even though it's not eaten, but you do kmitza and you burn them both. You burn the kmitza and the rest of it. Okay, so we were learning from a pasuk. The end of the last words of the section of the Menachos Daf, it says, "V'haisa la'kayan kamincha," will be for the kayan like a mincha. Now, we learned from that he was allowed to do the sacrifice himself, his own sacrifice. And then we learned that Reb Shimon compares it, that just like a mincha, you have to do kmitza, so to over here, you have to do kmitza. Now we're up to the 3rd line down. Imam Menachos Daf shall yisol nekmetzes v'shir nechalen, af Menachos Daf shall kain nekmetzes v'shir nechalen. 1 second. He says, where do you get that you need to do kmitza? Because you're comparing it to a regular mincha. And just like a mincha of Yisrael, you have to do kmitza. So this mincha also you have to do kmitza. So if you're going to do a comparison, so why don't you do a full comparison? The comparison would be that just like the remnants of the mincha of a regular mincha is eaten, so too of the mincha of the kayan, the remnants should be eaten. So no. Talmud Laimar, the teaching says, la kayan kamincha. The comparison is that it's similar to the kayan as a mincha. La kayan kamincha, v'leila ishim kamincha. Regarding the kayan, it's the same. Regarding the service of the kayan, it's the same. Regarding the mizbeach, it's not the same. It's la kayan kamincha. Only in relationship to the kayan, it's a mincha. In relationship to the mizbeach, it's different. Okay, so what do you mean in relationship to the mizbeach? The kayan's mincha is not a mincha. In relationship to the mizbeach, if it would have been a Yisrael's karban, the kayanim would eat it. But if it's a kayan's karban is not eaten, it's burnt on the mizbeach separately. Now the Gemara asks that from the beginning of this pasuk we said that a kayan is allowed to bring his own sacrifice. He can atone for himself. He can be his own doctor. We learn this from this pasuk. We have it from another source. From where do we know that a kayan can come whenever he wants and he can bring his own sacrifices? Talmud Laimar, it says, this is in the pasuk in Re'eh, I believe. V'sheres. He will come when his soul desires, and he will serve. That means whenever he wants, he can come and do the service. It says he will come to the place that Hashem has chosen, and he will serve in the name of Hashem as God, together with his brothers, the Leviim, that stand in front of Hashem. Imei Hasam, the Gemara says no. That source is not good enough for us. Our source teaches us more than that. Because if you would only use that source, the source in Devarim, not the source in Vayikra, Hava Amina, then I would have said, Hani Mili, when do we say that he can come and do the service? That's Davar Shein Ba'al Achet. That's if it's not a sin offering. He can come whenever his soul desires and do a service. He can perform the services of donation offerings. Avar Davar Sheba'al Achet, but something that's a sin offering, is coming because of a sin, Eimaloi. I would say that I need someone else to do that. He can't do that himself. He can't fix his own sins. He can bring his own donations, but he can't fix his own sins. So Vahanami. So that's why we need our pasuk. Our pasuk says that Bais Lakayin Kamincha. So the Gemara asks, 1 second. I have a source for that as well, a different source. Vahanami mehachanafka mehasam nafka. In this also, you learn it from here. I learned it from there. Hacha means here. Hasa means there. The taf and the shin are interchangeable in the Hebrew, so it's like sham, there. It says, the kain will atone for the soul that sins unknowingly, for his unintentional sin. Malamed, this teaches us, shakayin miskaper al yedei atzmai. Very clear. Kain can bring his own atonement. Why do you need v'haisel kain kamincha? We have a source that it can bring. It says, ala nefesh hashegeges, we say is also referring to himself. Afilu nafshi shalatzmai, even on himself. So Gemara says no, it's not enough. Our source tells us extra, because imei hahu, if it would only be from that pasuk, hava mina hani mili b'shoigig, I would only know an unintentional sin. He can fix himself. He can bring in his own sacrifice. Aval b'mezid, what's that aleph? Amezid. But on a sin offering, loy, he won't be able to do it himself. So Kamash Malan, so our pasuk tells us that even a mezid he can do himself. The Gemara says, b'mezid eichem mishkachas la. What type of sacrifice do you have when someone does b'mezid? B'mezid means intentionally. Usually, the sacrifices are only for unintentional sins. Intentional sins don't have sacrifices in most cases. What's the case of an intentional sin that he can bring a sacrifice on his own? It says B'zad and Shvuah. When he is administered an oath, if he knows testimony, and he swears that he doesn't, so even though he knowingly knows that he's lying, so he still has to bring a sacrifice. This is a unique case where a sacrifice is brought for an intentional sin. Okay. Tanya Idach. You want to use the Hebrew? Or?
Okay.
It was taught in another brisa. Reb Shimon Aimer. Reb Shimon says, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Minchas Choite shel Kayanim nikmetzes, sin offering of a Kayan. Kayan does a sin himself. He does a sin, and he brings instead of bringing the full sacrifice, he doesn't have the means to. He doesn't bring the birds. He brings the meal offering instead. So the kmitza is done. The kaimetz is offered on the altar to be burnt. Shirayim craven b'fnei atzma, and the shirayim are offered also. The shirayim are the remnants. What's left over after the kmitza is also burnt on its own. Two separate services. Rabbi Lazar bar Shimon Aimer. His son is about to say something. Rabbi Lazar is Reb Shimon's son. He says, "Hakaimetz karev ba'atzmai." The kaimetz, yes, is brought on its own. He agrees with his father about that. And vashirayim mispazrim al beis hadeshen. And the remnants are sprinkled over the place of ashes. Amar Reb Chia bar Abba. Reb Chia bar Abba says, Heavy bar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan deliberated over this. Heavy is like asked or deliberated.
Is it a machlokes between Bais and Rishon?
Apparently. Let me see what the commentary says. I guess so. Craven means that it's offered up on the mizbeach. Must be Reb Shimon holds that it's offered up. And Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon says no. It's just sort of like destroyed. It's not eaten. It's just destroyed. So Rabbi Yochanan deliberated over this. Beis Hadeshen dehecha. When you say the place of ashes, which place of ashes? Id l'mayla. It has to be a machlekes. Id l'mayla. If it's on the altar, you have fire, pyres. How did, right? PY, right? You have these fires, and you also have the it's called the tapuach. There was a place of ashes there where they would, after you grill, so you have the coals on the bottom. You have to empty them somewhere. So they would empty them right in the center, and it would pile up higher and higher on the Yom Tovim. It was very high to show how much sacrifices were brought. They had over there also hot coals that were thrown into the tapuach, burning coals. So that place could be called the Beis Hadeshen. It's a place of ashes, the tapuach. So he's saying where was it put? If it's put on the altar, so it wasn't put on the fire, it was put on the Beis Hadeshen, but Hainu Avua. That's what his father holds. That's what Reb Shimon holds. That it was put on the altar. So it wasn't right here. It was right there, but it would probably smolder and get burnt as well. Idul Amata. If you say it's the Beis Hadeshen down below, there was another Beis Hadeshen, which was several feet away from the altar. There was this little area where they would put. Every morning they would take a scoopful of ashes and they would put it there, and it would get absorbed into the ground, even though it was a marble floor, but somehow it would get absorbed miraculously, I guess, into the floor. And they would also put other things over there. It was called the Beis Hadeshen. So if it's off the altar, or is it on top of the altar? If it's on top of the altar, then that's what his father holds, that it's brought up on the altar. If it's below, is there such a thing that you have something that's offered off the altar? We had this whole discussion once about Shlomo Melech, when he brought his sacrifices, when he inaugurated the temple. It says Kiddush Azara or something. That there were too many sacrifices for the altar to hold, so they inaugurated the floor of the Azara, that they were able to offer things anywhere on the floor. That was the discussion in Zvachim, I believe. So here, but is there such a thing that's offered off the altar? It's burnt off. Amalei Rababa, Dilma Leibud. Rabbi tells him, can't be his father, must be someone else. Rabbi Chia bar Rabba was saying this over. Rabbi Chia bar Rabba is saying that Rabbi Yochanan was deliberating over this. Oh, maybe Rabbi Abba, his father, tells it to Rabbi Yochanan. That could be. So Rabbi Abba says, Dilma leibud. Maybe it's not an offering. Maybe it's just a way of destroying it. Who says it's an offering? Achichola. They laughed at that. They laughed at him. It can't be. Is there such a thing that's just brought to be destroyed? That can't be. Tani Avua, the Rav Oven. There's two commentaries here. If this is supposed to be a response to what we just learned, or if this is a new thing. It was interesting because they bring that Rav Oven was an Amira in the 4th generation, and he would bring brises. In the Rashi on the top, he says, Memra b'fnei atzmai, which means that this is a brand new piece. This has nothing to do with what we said before.
Here it says the Gemara, the friends of Abba, was showing that the remnants of sin and Menachos Daf are indeed discarded. Inside of the ashes.
That's the second shot. The second shot that he brings. Do they say that there's a another view?
No.
Yes, that's
Which
interesting.
Rashi are you talking about?
The
Ksav Yad or the?
no, the fake one.
No, don't say that. Whatever.
Tani Avu.
Memory Financial.
Remember, that would mean it's a brand new piece. Okay, but if it answers the question, then good. Oid Efsher, Oid Amar Meir Rabbi Zal. That's what he brings in the second interpretation. So, Tani Avu Derab Oven. Kol Minchas Koyen Kol Tia Lo Seyachal. This is a continuation of. This is a. Every day, the Kohen Gadol would bring a sacrifice. It was called Minchas Chavitin. It was divided in half in the morning, half in the afternoon. We had a discussion on this once, how it was done and all of that. So, but it wasn't eaten. It was totally burned. And in that section in Tzav, Parshas Tzav, I believe, it says the last verse of that section. It says, "V'chol minchas kayin kol tia leisiyachal." Every mincha of a kayin is totally burnt, kolel. It should not be eaten. So, la'achila hi kashtia, v'leila davar acher. We're comparing it for eating, but not for something else. Okay. The Gemara asks, what are you talking about? Maika Amar. What are you saying? You're comparing it for eating, but not for something else? Amar Abaya. Abaya explains, Hachi ka Amar, this is what the Bais means. Kol minchas kayin, every mincha that a kayin brings, means a meal offering that a kayin brings, leisei yachal chayvasai. Don't eat it if it's an obligatory offering. What could be an obligatory offering? Well, the minchas chavitin. If it's the Kohen Gadol's offering that he has to bring every day, that's obligation. Or if it's a sin offering, you don't eat it. Kol tia nidvasei. However, if it's a donation offering, you burn it. Now, what's the difference between don't eat it and burn it? The difference is that when you say don't eat it, it doesn't mean that you don't do kmitza on it. You don't eat it, but you can still do the full service. You take it, you do kmitza, but don't eat it. Kol tia means that you don't do anything, you just burn it right away. That's the implication of that. That you don't even do kmitza. So if it's a nedava, so you just, a donation offering, then you just burn it without any kmitza. But if it's an obligation offering, then you do kmitza. That's what Abaya is explaining this pasuk. So we're comparing to the mincha of the Kohen Gadol for achila. We say la achila hikashtia. Minchas chavitin. The comparison is just that you don't eat it. Now, is a minchas chavitin? Do we do kmitza on the minchas chavitin? I don't remember. Minchas uloi haisa nekmetzas. It wasn't. So why are we saying that it's comparable to eating? It's comparable that it's not. Oh, that's what it means. Only regarding the eating part is it comparable to the minchas chavitin, because the minchas chavitin, the Kohen Gadol's mincha, you didn't do kmitza on. You also didn't eat it, but you didn't do kmitza on it. So we say if it's an obligation offering, you don't eat it, but you do kmitza. In other words, the comparison is only in one aspect, that you don't eat it. It's not comparable regarding the kmitza. That's what the Bais means. Okay, now the problem is that the beginning of the pasuk is referring to the chayva. Kol minchas kayin kol tia. No, the beginning of the pasuk is referring to the nedava, and we're saying that that's not comparable. No, the beginning of the pasuk is referring to the nedava. and we're saying that it's totally burnt, the donation offering. The end of the pasuk, we're saying is comparable, is the obligation offering, loy seyachal, and we're saying that that's only comparable regarding achila. So Amalei Rava says, Sakina Charifa Mafsuka Kroi. You have a very sharp knife that you're dividing up this pasuk, because it's not doing it in the normal order that you would do it. What would be more comparable would be Elama Rava. Rava says, Kol Menachos Kain Kol Tia. Let's talk about the first part of the pasuk. The first part of the pasuk is that it's totally burnt. That's nidvasei. Lo seyachal, but don't eat chayvasei. But don't eat the chayva, which means the obligation offering, the sin offering, you don't eat it. However, you do the kmitz on it. There's really no difference between Rav and Abaya, other than which part of the pasuk we're going to explain first. Okay. The Gemara now asks, the Ipachana. How do you know? We have two types of sacrifices that the Kayan brings: a donation offering and an obligation. If it's a donation offering, then you don't do kmitz on it; you just burn it. If it's a donation, you don't do kmitza; you just burn it. If it's an obligation, you do kmitza, but you don't eat it; you burn it. So how do we know that that's the case? Maybe it should be exactly the opposite. In other words, we have precedent. Precedent is the minchas chavitin. The Kohen Gadol brings every day a carbon mincha, where he doesn't eat it and he doesn't do kmitz on it. And we're comparing that either to a donation or to an obligation. So far, we've compared that to a donation offering. We say that there's no kmitza and there's no eating. Maybe, but an obligation offering, you do kmitzas, so that we're not doing a perfect comparison there. But maybe we should. Maybe we should do a comparison to the obligation offering and leave the donation offering out and say that on a donation offering you do kmitza. You don't eat. None of them are going to be eaten. The question is, do you do that service? Eipachana. Do it exactly the opposite. The Gemara says no. Mistaber nidvasei havalei l'ribuye. It's more probable that the donation offering should be similar to the chavitin. Why? Because shekein tedira, a donation offering could be brought every day if the person wants. Could bring a donation offering every day. And loy chate, it doesn't come for a sin. Very similar to the Kohen Gadol's offering, which comes every day and doesn't come for a sin. And the third thing is basam reche. It has a nice smell. What's the nice smell? It has oil in it, and it has the frankincense, just like the chavitin. Officially, it does. The chelbana didn't have a good smell. The levina officially has a good smell. I mean, when we smelt it, we didn't really like it, but that could be like some of us don't like, aged cheese or old wine, or could be we didn't develop, the taste. Could be a different frankincense.
Isn't there like a Gemara or a Medrash says
about the chelbana? The chelbana didn't have a good smell. The levina does have.
The chelbana, levina, mishkal, shivib, shivimana. That was the main part of the claris. Isn't that? It's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's the chelbana is one of them, and the levina is another one from the 11. The levina officially has a good smell.
Okay.
Yeah, the ones that we smelled was not great, but okay. So whatever the case is, it's spiced up. It has this comparison. 3 things that make it similar to the Kohen Gadol's carbon. So that's why it should be very similar. That you don't do kmitza on it. You don't do that service. The Gemara says Adarabba. On the contrary, chayvasei havalei l'ribuye. The sin offering is more similar. Why? Shekeni Saran. It comes exactly the same size. It's brought as an Isaran. The 10th of an ephah. 53 in a fifth eggs. Or a third. 53 and a fifth. Okay. It's also chayva. It's also an obligation. Just like the Kohen Gadol's mincha is an obligation. So we have 2 things that make it similar. Gemara says, well, Hanach Nefishin. The other one has 3. The Nadava has 3. You only have The chayv only has two, so we're going to make it more similar to the nedava. Now, the Rabbanan were the ones that argued on Reb Shimon. What are they going to do with this pasuk? This pasuk seems to tell us that you do the kmitza on a sin offering, but you just don't eat it. The Rabbanan held that any offering of a kayan, no kmitza, you just put it straight on the altar. Reb Shimon says, no, there's a difference. Some of them get kmitza. You just don't eat it, but you do kmitza. What are the rabbis going to do with this pasuk that Reb Shimon had as a support? So mibaylu l'kedetanya, they need it for something that was taught in a brisa. Eily el yoyne b'kol takta v'tachteina b'lei seyachal. You see, just because the Torah says what to do, doesn't mean that if you don't do that, you violate a negative prohibition. So it says by the Minchas Chavitin, it says that you burn it. By a Mincha V'Kayan, it says that you do not eat it. By the Chavitin, it doesn't say do not eat, it just says burn it. I can understand from that you don't eat it. And by the regular Kayan's Mincha, it says do not eat, but it doesn't say to burn it. I can understand that you're supposed to burn it, but it didn't say that. What do you do with it if you don't eat it? So, how do you know that the one that you're supposed to burn, that means that you're not allowed to eat, and if you do, it's a violation, a negative prohibition? And how do you know that the one that you're not allowed to eat means that you're supposed to burn? Talmud Laimar kalal kalal l'gzeira shava. It says the word kalal. Nemar kan kalal. It says over here by the mincha of the kayan. V'nemar lahalon kalal. And it says over there by the mincha of the chavitin kalal. Kalal means entirely. Ma lahalon b'kol takter. Just like over there, it means that it needs to be entirely burnt. Afkan b'kol takter. Also by the kayan's mincha, it needs to be entirely burnt. Just because it's not eaten doesn't tell me what to do. I have the Gzeir Shava that says that it needs to be burnt. Just like by the Kayan's mincha, it says do not eat, is a laisa say if the person eats it. Also, by the minchas chavitin, there's a negative prohibition for eating it. Okay. Boy Ravina. Ravina, this is the end of the Talmudic period. He has a question. Kayan she'achal min haimurin mahu. You're not allowed to eat the parts of the sacrifice that are put on the altar, that are meant to be on the altar, the fats and the inner organs that are burnt on the altar. Let's say a kayan eats from it. Talking about the kidneys or the diaphragm, the yeseres hakavod is the diaphragm that's put on the altar. Lav dezaros, the prohibition of a non-kayan eating from a sacrifice. Loikami ba'ili. That's not my question. And as it's taken for granted that a Yisrael or a Levi is not allowed to eat from the sacrifice. Now, being that that a kayan is not allowed to eat from certain parts of the sacrifice, so he's considered like a Yisrael or a Levi eating from the sacrifice in relationship to those parts of the sacrifice. So he's considered not eligible to eat from that part. So he's not discussing this. Hikami ba'ili. What is my question? Lav de kol tia. Is it a prohibition of not burning it because of the Gzeir Shava? In other words, the Gzeir Shava was for a karban mincha. He said the mincha of the chavitin. I compared it to a mincha of a kayan. And we said that there's a negative prohibition because of a Gzeir Shava. Gzeir Shava means that if I have a word in this section, which is exactly the same as a word in that section, I'll compare them together and say that the prohibitions of this apply to that. But does this also apply to an animal sacrifice? So my Amar of Aaron LaRavina. I'm not familiar with Rav Aaron. I don't recognize the name from other places. But Toshima, he quotes a Bais, the Tanya. Rabbi Lezer Kol Shu B'Kol Tia. Anything that is not allowed to be, anything that needs to be burnt, Litin Leisasei Alachilasei. It's coming to add a negative prohibition on its eating, which means that anything that needs to go on the altar, there's a negative prohibition to eat it. So a kohen that eats the things that go on the altar, besides that he wasn't allowed to eat it because he's not eligible, but he also violates the negative prohibition of the Gzeir Shav of Kol Tia. Okay. A new Mishnah. Minchas Koyanim. Minchas Koyan Mashiach. Any meal offering of Koyanim. The meal offering of the Kohen Gadol, which is brought every day. Uminchas Nisachim. And the meal offering that comes along with an animal sacrifice, which every animal has a different measurement of how much flour and how much oil. Lamizbeach. They're only put on the altar. Ve'ein behem lakayanim, and nothing goes to the kayanim. B'zeh yafi kayach mizbeach mikayach kakayanim. In these three, the mizbeach is stronger, has more than the kayanim. The strength of the mizbeach is better than the kayanim because the mizbeach gets all of this. Now we go to the reverse, to the opposite. Shtei alechem v'lechem apanim, the two breads of Shavuos, and the showbreads which are on Shabbos, which are the 12 loaves which are on Shabbos. Necholim lakayanim, this is eaten to the kayanim. Ve'ein behem lemizbeach, and nothing goes to the altar. Ubazeh yafikayach hakayanim mikayach hamizbeach. And over here you have the strength of the kayanim over the mizbeach. Okay. The Gemara asks, V'suleka. You just said that ubazeh, and with this you have see the strength. That means you're saying that there's nothing else. You gave you exhausted all the options that would be only on the mizbeach and not to the kayanim. V'ika oila. Any oila offering, any burnt offering, the entire thing goes on the altar and nothing goes to the kayanim. Gemara says no. Ika oira lakayanim. The skin, the hide of the burnt offering is removed, and the kayanim get the leather, get the skin. They can use it for leather, parchment. It's a private. The Gemara says, "V'ika oila sa'if." What about the burnt offering of a bird? That's entirely burnt. You don't take off the skin or the feathers. So no, ikamura v'naitza. The inner part of the bird was not put on the altar. It was thrown to that Beis Hadeshen that we discussed.